Most people, when I come up with an idea, if I don't get like a nah or like a ooh or a not there.
Playing it too safe.
Too safe.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Defiant Talk. It's your host here, Sid, and my business partner and co-founder, Jamie.
And we're here with Fred from finder.com.au, tech giant, tech genius really, and crypto entrepreneur. For those out there who don't actually know who you are, who is Fred?
I'm a creator, a farmer. I plant and invest things, and I back teams and I back people, and I think I'm a curator of ideas. I work out what to say no to and what to say yes to, and then based on that, great people make great products. And I think that courage to say no to things and courage to say yes to things is what I think a founder's job is.
Would you consider yourself as a disruptor?
I'm trying to be. I think hopefully I could be a little bit more. I think that somewhere inside myself, when I was a kid, I have very intellectual parents. They're both doctors, and they were extremely smart. And if you wanted to get something smart past someone who's already smart, it's, you need to be pretty smart and work out some smart ways of doing that, right? And so if I always took the traditional line of argument, they're older than me, they knew the world better than me, and they tend to win. So what I would always do is drag them onto a piece of ground that, they didn't understand that I did potentially.
Was completely left field, right?
Correct. Sun Tzu style. And, I think that kind of thinking, if you extrapolate that into the future, that out of the box, that's considered out of the box thinking. It's considered potentially sometimes rebellious thinking. And I think in some ways, I tend to go for those ideas because for me, that was the only way I could win. And so unfortunately, most of the problems I try to solve in a new way, because I assume that someone really smarter than me is probably gone the other way, and they're already going to beat me that way.
How did that defiance come about? Was there ever a roadmap for you to actually become a doctor and follow into the footsteps of your parents?
Yeah, I did take the medicine test for university, and I failed pretty badly. And I think the part that I failed the most was bedside manner. Apparently, I got like 2% correct. There was like, the letters were like not A, B, C, D. It was A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And I was like, I don't know. It could have been any of these, Apparently, I'm not very good at that. When I went to university and I studied actuarial studies and computer science, and then as I was going along, I realized I was not an actuary or a computer scientist. In fact, I was in those courses, and I noticed the students that were great at that. And I was like, oh, I would like to hire you. And I literally tried to hire people in my own class to build my own projects. Didn't quite work out that way. Because they didn't believe that I was, I was in the same class as them. How could I hire them? Anyway. But, so I wasn't a great coder. I wasn't a great actuary. But I took those ideas, and in some small way, I could implement the ideas I learned on the internet where it was a new space. And that little bit of coding skill was actually, I was the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. And I think that was the moment, I remember this moment. I was supposed to go to an actuarial studies exam, and that night I learned how to program databases, in PHP for the very first time. It was a breakthrough for me. But in that moment, I didn't study for the exam. I turned up and I literally filled in the attendance form, and I walked out and I left. And I think that was the moment I decided this is not for me. And I told my parents, and that didn't go around terribly well. Mm-hmm. So I promptly left home, let's say mutually agreed, left home when I was 20, and I moved out with my friends, and I started, I actually rented an office, and started this business while I was still at university, which was I think I had a bit of a breakdown during that. It wasn't a good idea. It was probably too much. But I think that moment, it was just too much change all at once. And I had no idea how to run a business. I just thought I'd figure it out.
So did you just take a leap into entrepreneurship, or was there a crucial moment where you thought to yourself, like, this is who I am. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I can't work for anyone else. I can't follow into the footsteps of, my parents. And this is what I want to be doing.
I think that the moment, and when I didn't go to the exam was a key one. I remember I went for a job interview at Sun Microsystems. So Sun Microsystems back in the day was a great company. They made computers and they made Java and they sold that to Oracle. But in Sun Microsystems, I'm not sure what it does these days, but back then it was the thing. So I went for a job. Sitting on the other side of the table, and one of the questions I remember there were 2 interviews, and the guy said, "So, Fred, what do you want to do in 3 years' time?" I said, "Well, I'd probably want to sit on the other side of the table like you and ask dumb questions to young kids." And I don't think he really appreciated that, and I didn't get a job at my Sun Microsystems. And I don't think I was, naturally, I've always taken my own path, and I'm a curious individual. I'm an explorer. And so it doesn't take much to connect that to building a company. That can go in all sorts of different framings and formats, just that I chose this one.
So being someone that always sort of forges your own way, takes your own path, there's obviously a lot of ups and downs throughout that journey. You see a lot of those mind maps of the what people think entrepreneur is and what it actually is. I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of those yourself. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you've overcome so far in your career? Can you pinpoint one specific one?
So, maybe just to give context, I probably hear more no's than I hear yeses on a regular basis. And I'm very comfortable with that, because I'm not hearing no's, then something's not being pushed hard enough. And when I am hearing a lot of no's, then we're probably at the right level of edge.
I like that.
Awesome. I think...
Is this both internally and externally?
A bit of both, yeah. I'd say more internally than externally.
Okay.
Rallying people to ideas, influencing, challenging, inspiring, and from that you tend to get great things tend to happen.
So just to stay on that, do you have a specific route that you take to get people to buy into your ideas?
I just start talking about it.
You're a great storyteller, right?
I tell a story or two. It's not easy, and I have a note in my calendar, and I have several notes that just remind myself. They're meetings to myself. They're 10, 15 minutes. And, one of them is, what problem are you telling a story about? It just reminds me to tell the story, and I'll just go and try and tell a story about a problem that I see and just share that. Say, hey, there was this customer and they did this, they noticed that, and this and this happened. And then just leave it with the problem. And people feel a problem, they go, oh, that's a problem. And then when people hear a problem, what naturally tends to happen is, what people are really good at is solving problems. People are great at that. What's more challenging is figuring out what problem should you go and solve. And that's, I feel, what I'm probably better at, to say, okay, this probably is the better problem to go and solve. Sometimes my timing's a bit out, but, I've gotten better and better at that. I think stories are great. I like to create visuals, pictures, write words, headlines, and then I'll start making videos, and I'll start, talking about it really loudly all the time, and like this rally call everyone, and hey, about this, and just on the chat, I'm just in everyone's face. Like, I am just talking about this idea. I'm writing narratives, I'm running presentations and getting people to have meetings about these things. Let's have a brainstorm about, let's get into this idea. It's just like...
At what point did you sort of go from being the person having the crazy idea and executing it yourself to having a team and starting to build a team? Like, what was that transition like for you?
I remember very clearly in the agency we used to run with Frank, who's the other founder or finder. There was a moment we sold a piece of work to build an e-commerce site, and I thought, maybe I should build part of this, and then the guys politely said, "Hey, why don't we take care of this?" And I realized they're like, it's probably going to be more sustainable to code. I thought about it and I was like, yeah, probably will be.
So that was the kind of first time you sort of gave out the rope, gave someone like responsibility, and from then on, you was just like, all right, now I can actually start delegating, giving these ideas to people, and trusting them.
Yeah, that's part of it. And I had a designer before that, the very first person, and I still work with him. He's very creative in all sorts of different ways. I think in Finder, I went back to actually being the coder in the beginning. Actually coded the site and built it up. And then I think, but the dropping of the ego, humility to realize and recognize that you're not if you're the ideas person, I don't think you tend to be the best executor because you get caught up in the next idea and then you jump onto the next thing. And I know Sid, you're smiling. I'm sure. You're
Sounds like me.
I think but that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to answer I know you talked about two before that was about the biggest failure.
Or challenge.
Yeah, challenge. I think for me, it's always been about how do I communicate my ideas into and turn them into reality. That's a macro picture, biggest challenge I've ever had because I live so far forward in the future and I'm like a time traveler and I constantly come back to today and I'm like, why are we even doing this? It's like, Fred, you said to do that 2 weeks ago. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember now. We've only just started doing this. Well, I've got a new idea now.
So how are you dealing with that?
Well, I think, as you mature and I think, it takes time, you realize when you make a plan, you have to stick to it because you made that plan and that's your commitment to everyone else. And if you keep chopping and changing, unfortunately, you get what is the most expensive thing for any human is context switching cost. And context switching cost is is sort of like this expense, which I think should be somewhere on the P&L.
Sheet,
somewhere. And it essentially means when you switch from one idea to another and you stop and you move and you go. Now, some people can handle that. And I think there are certain people that enjoy that. There are certain moments when that's critical. But most of the time, I'd say a good 70%, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I just made a commitment to doing things quarterly. I've made the promise and commitment of what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And I make that to the engineers and to the product managers and the marketers and say, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do. And high level, my commitment and promise to them on that determines my leadership strength. It's a direct correlation. Because if I make a promise and I don't deliver on it, then they look at me and go, Fred's going to say this, then he's going to say this, then he's going to say this.
Compromised.
And then what happens is quality decreases. Projects get 50% finished and no one ever really gets that motivated because they assume whatever's going to happen is going to change in 2 weeks' time because Fred's got another idea, and that's infuriating for a lot of people. And it's, obviously I have to live with that my entire life. But.
So talk to us about leadership. Do you think that it's a skill that you're born with? Do you think that it's something that you can actually refine? How did you deal with, your leadership style and how do people around you kind of adapt to the way that you lead?
So I think I'm a visionary. Like I paint a picture of the future. And then when it comes to translating that into a plan, I surround myself with people like that. People who take that idea and go, yeah, I get that. And I turn that into reality. Here's a plan, Fred, we're going to go do this. Excellent. I'm like, carry on, sir. And then I have this, what I call active forgetting. I literally just forget about the idea and then I come back to it in like a while. I'm like, oh, that's right. That was a great idea. And now it's executed. Awesome. Let's go on to the next thing. And what it does, I think this active forgetting is actually what you're doing is delegating responsibility, giving total control and autonomy. And the most important thing in that is to set a very clear expectation of what success looks like. And this is something which I've taken a long time to develop. It's not my natural. I don't think it comes naturally. I think it's a learned behavior. And I think it's something you can develop and a skill you can get better at. I think the most recent one of leadership, and there are many dimensions to this, is I had to work on my faith.
Okay.
Faith in myself and faith in other people. So what does that mean? Well, I don't have to worry these days about, can I trust this person? Well, if you set a clear expectation from the beginning, it's not about trust. It's actually about integrity. Is that person going to deliver on what their word is? And that's really on them. If they don't deliver back to you, then hey, it's people. Doesn't matter. That was you set the expectation. They didn't deliver on it. Well, there's a consequence to that, and we can move on.
I think that's so empowering to you as well as a founder to not have that over your head all the time. Like once you get to that point, it's like, all right, this is how this relationship's going to go. And once I've delegated something, given you clear expectations, it's off my plate. I can focus on other things now.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning, I was probably not great at that. And then I think when you're creating, it's even something brand new. When you have a lot of ambiguity, that's really tough. And I don't know whether I think you need to decrease the cycle time. So go from quarterly, monthly to even weekly, sometimes daily. I love when you get into a daily meeting project. It's like, yes, top of the day, end of the day, you're just hectic, but you're pivoting, you're moving in fast, right? Yeah. And that's only sustainable for a certain period of time. I think of it so leadership for me goes I don't know if you've read that situational leadership. So, I always think of it when I'm starting something, it's you're in the boat on D-Day, going in the boat, and you're this is what we think's going to happen. Bring some guns and some grenades. There's probably going to be a lot of mess.
A few robes.
Yeah. Let's just go, and we're going to go over that hill. Where exactly, Fred? Oh, I'm not sure yet. We're going to figure that out when we get there, but we're going over the hill. So you get on the beach, and in that moment, I think you can get very specific, and you say, this person's you go down there and shoot that way. You go over here, throw grenades here, and you cover fire for everyone else, and you take care of everyone else. That's what we're going to do to start. And you get quite specific in that operation when you're beginning. And then as it starts to spool up, you start to give autonomy. Say, hey, cover that area and do it as best you think, but this is the end objective. We need to get over that hill. Can you figure out a way? And then autonomy starts to be handed over, and you have to be less specific over time. And eventually where I get to a point of is literally some of my crew, it's just emotional support. So how's this person feeling? If they're up, they're down, having a good day, bad day. And, I tend to just, I don't know, I have a sense about people, so maybe, this is important. I just want to share this. I think it's probably a bit vulnerable, but I'm actually not the best manager. I'm actually pretty bad. I'd say I'm a solid 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 on a good day.
Have you been given that feedback before?
No, it's just but self-assessment. It's a solid. It's if I'm being objective.
You've seen great managers.
Yeah. And what they do, and they're regular, and they're aligned, and they communicate, and they're get people organized, and they're continuously creating succession plans and timing. And it's and there are people around me like that, and they're amazing. I look at them, I'm just disjointed and staccato and literally on one day, then completely dumping down on another day, and then 2 weeks I'm on, and it's just it's that's not good for management. But what I am good at is being a leader in painting a picture, setting a really clear expectation of what success looks like, being prepared to say yes and no to certain things on scope, on quality, and then making the ultimate call and being responsible. I am responsible for the leadership of Finder and decisions of what happens. The buck stops everything. Actually, when it all goes down, I suggested those investments. I made, yes, the execution wasn't me. Yes, the responsibility at the end of the day now hands over, and there are other managers and CEOs that go and execute those things. But, a lot of that strategy and, obviously with my crew, it's not just me, but someone needs to take responsibility, and that's the leader.
So it's clear that you've obviously found your superpower and you're working towards that. And you actually said in one of your interviews that you think the most important thing to being successful is finding your superpower. For those out there that are listening, how do you go about that? Is it just a matter of getting in the trenches, doing things, failing, and finding out what you're good at? How did you find it?
So I think there is a time component to that. I don't think you just find your superpower overnight. That'd be awesome. But I think there are, the one process I use is I constantly ask myself in any situation, or I think this is a good question potentially to ask yourself, because I think it all comes from within, right? Everything's an exploration of your own self. There's a massive, deep trench of learning to be done in any individual of themselves. Quick story. This is just one. It's a bit of it's a wanger I heard the other day, but someone said, I hate being, alone. And I said, well, and they said, well, that's really weird because you must be not good company to be around.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Wow.
Amen. I think about that all the time.
Put that one in there somewhere. I'm not sure. Hopefully that makes it through the cut. But somewhere
that's
just
a soundbite.
Been ringing for me for a bit. So let's go back. The key question I like to ask myself, or I submit that could be good to find your superpower. Sorry, just take a quick drink.
Go for it. For gold.
So I think the key to finding your superpower is to ask yourself, what is something that I do that I am not 10x better than other people, but I'm 100x better? Like when you go and play a game, like you play a computer game and your character's really good at this. You got another character to do that same thing, it wouldn't go so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one casts spells all day. Then the mage, goes to be a fighter and it's like, nah. And the fighter comes out and goes and tries to cast a spell, not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, in that way, if you look at yourself objectively, like take a meta approach and try and look at yourself and you think about where do you crush it? You're like, I crush this. And it's like literally like it's so easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you love it. And so I stopped, what I tend to do is literally write a list of things and I sort of note down things each year. I write down 5 things I want to stop doing and 5 things I want to start doing. And from that, I think it's really interesting is if you just figure out if I wanted to achieve great success, what are 5 things I could stop doing? What are 5 things I could start doing? And if you notice the things you stop doing, it's like, for me, it's like one of the things I said was, I just don't want to get involved with administration.
Okay.
Like I suck at that. And I really suck at, I actually don't enjoy, aligning the company in presentations and all that stuff. Like I love talking and I think a good speaker. And if we're going to get fired up about on a mission or on a journey and share this vision, it's sick, I'm keen.
Yeah.
But if we're like giving an update on the quarter, like,
yeah. That
please.
just makes it so clear though, right? 5 things you love doing or 5 things you want to continue doing, 5 things you don't want to do anymore.
And so I guess what I'm trying to submit from that last thing is the reason what you take from that is I don't want to do that. Well, potentially that means you're not a great manager. Yeah. So maybe just stop trying to be a manager and just work with independent contributors and be an independent contributor in and of yourself and start focusing on your leadership and be a great leader.
Yeah. I think that's such a clear way of finding your strengths.
The way that I actually like to think about that is kind of like a relationship with myself and what parts of myself do I need to break up with in order to actually level up to the next version of myself.
That's real. That's a much more beautiful story, Sid, than mine. Mine's more the raw, like in the trench, like
there's truth in that, man.
Mine was the blockchain. Yours was like Bitcoin.
There's truth in that.
On that note, I think you've got some topics you want to talk about with that.
So on that note, obviously you co-founded Hivex in 2018, which is a large volume crypto brokerage. Now, for someone who's not familiar with the space, how would you explain what blockchain is, and how does it enable for cryptocurrency to actually exist?
So I'll tell a story. Let's imagine we were all, when you were kids, we were all sitting around, and imagine we had a candy bar in front of us. And one of us reached out to get the candy bar, took a bite, and then we afterwards asked, oh, well, who took a bite of the candy bar? Well, we're all looking at the candy bar, so all of us, and we can all tell everyone else who was looking at the candy bar, and therefore we know who ate the candy bar. And so in the same way, the blockchain is essentially just a whole lot of people looking at a ledger of transactions and determining, what has happened and what has not in a public environment. And just that concept and that idea, I think, is very powerful. And what that enables us to do is enable trustless transactions. You can give someone a candy bar, and everyone else can see that you're giving the candy bar. And because everyone else can see, everyone knows who now has one more candy bar and who has one less. And that fundamental idea can be scaled, and it's really scaled all around the world. That's essentially the technology that enables us to send value from one person to the other, enables that to be all done on a ledger. We all know our balances because we've all shared the information publicly with each other.
So I'm not massive in the crypto space, but one burning question that I have about it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is do you believe that Bitcoin could be an actual currency that we use day to day, or do you see it more as like a store of value?
Bitcoin's a store of value for me. I think there are ways you can use it to be a currency, with the Lightning Network, and there are advances like that. But at its absolute core, I think the simplest answer, we could go so far and wide, and the narrative of Bitcoin's changed over time, all the time, and things do. But it's kind of like everything in crypto actually does come back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going up, everything else is going up. Yeah. Bitcoin's going down, everything's going down. Not everything, but a good chunk of things, right?
I've actually heard you speak about that as a comparison to the Kardashians family and Bitcoin being Kim K, and then all the altcoins below it essentially being, your Kendall and Kylie Jenner, etc., which is such a great analogy.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's exactly what happens. And right now, Bitcoin's on fire. I reckon, sorry, I don't know if this is not financial advice, but I reckon it's about to we dipped down a bit. I think it's about to kick really hard right now. I think it's in that moment. Everything's sold off. It's regathered steam. I think we're about to go for.
Would you like to speculate about predictions, or?
I reckon we could go 85 to 100K from here.
So to someone who comes from, I guess, an investment background into property, what would be your advice in regards to differentiating investment?
So I think, let's break down a few components. I think the first thing everyone gets freaked out by with Bitcoin is that the price is so volatile. Well, imagine if someone came to your door every single minute and said, "Hey, here's the price of your property. Here's the price of your property. Here's the price of your property. Here's the price of your property." You'd be like, "Whoa, my property is really volatile."
That's so true.
So, I reject the notion that it's really volatile. It just trades 24/7. That's just the difference. And people are making a market, and it's just faster. So let's put that to the side. I think let's go down to the fundamental. I think property and Bitcoin they have similar characteristics in that they have a scarcity. There's only one piece of property in this specific place. Mm-hmm. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin ever that's going to be made. That's it. You either have one or you don't. It's a binary thing. So, I think if you're buying a piece of property, you always think you paid too much. It always happens. And then, 3 years later, you're like, wow, that's worth a lot of money. It's amazing. Let's look at, say, for example, Bitcoin. You may buy at the top. And I have this habit of buying the top all the time. And then...
So do I.
Yeah. You get emotional and you're like, it's going to go. And then it falls and you're like, wow. But literally, actually, I've heard this strategy actually that if you just bought the top all the time, you'd actually do really well. You just got to hold.
Why is that?
Well, at the actual core, Bitcoin is a deflationary asset. It's more gold is being mined out of the ground currently than Bitcoin's being produced. It has more inflation in gold itself than in Bitcoin now, after the halving in May 2020. So if you think about, there's a certain amount of demand for this asset. People in the Ukraine, like the main streets of Ukraine, have Bitcoin shops because the currency is terrible. I know a couple of guys in Venezuela. They run a business that actually helps people move money outside the country because the banks are controlled. It's 25% like fees to move through the banks to do foreign exchange. It's just not possible, right? So there are functional reasons why you store value in Bitcoin. I know some guys in the Cayman Islands, confidentially, I can't say who, but let's just say the vaults used to have all gold in them. Now there's a lot of Trezors down. Trezors are hardware wallets.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of Bitcoins being stored in the Cayman Islands. So let's get past this idea of store of value. I think when people look at property, yes, there's the functional use of it, but really you could go down to this intrinsic idea. What's the intrinsic value of land? You can't eat it, or you could plant something into it. You could put something on top of it, I suppose. I think it's the same thing, right? It's a fiat title to a specific plot. I think those two things, those concepts, so there is value in both of those. That is why I would say they are similar. It's just, I think Bitcoin is much faster to move. It's digital. It's always trading. There's always a price. Liquidity is incredible now. You actually can earn interest on it as well, which that's a whole other dimension. We could go down the rabbit hole on that one. That's the area which I'm loving right now, just quietly. But that's why I would submit they're quite similar.
You sold?
Yeah, I'm sold. For sure. I've been looking into it. Obviously, I'm big on property, but at the moment, the property market is just ridiculous to get into that. And what you just said about liquidity makes a lot of sense to me and probably anyone that is thinking the same way, which would be a lot of people at the moment. I know NFTs. I don't ever want to bring up the topic because I don't know enough about it, but a fair bit
in the last
about
6 months, NFTs have become hugely popular within crypto users and companies. Can you explain to us what our NFTs are?
So NFT stands for non-fungible token. So fungibility means, the idea of fungibility means one $10 note is the same as another $10 note. Now, if it's non-fungible, it means that one $10 note is not the same as another $10 note. Maybe it looks different. Yeah, sure, the numbers are different, but fundamentally, so essentially, these are assets which are unique. Okay. Completely unique. And if you're going to go a bit technical, so in 2018, I actually went to a hack day in London to write Ethereum smart contracts. I was sitting around with engineers and teenagers, and they're like, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I run this company." They're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Hey, let's I was just trying to learn about the Ethereum and blockchain." Anyway, it was but from that, I actually wrote smart contracts, and all it is at its absolute core is it's just a different standard on the blockchain, which means it can't be replicated. It is unique. So this idea of uniqueness and scarcity, there's only one Mona Lisa. Mm-hmm. It's very tough to replicate that because it's in the one position, it's in the one place. I think what is fascinating, and I think if this idea will probably echo in time, is the idea of digital scarcity. In that we think, Bitcoin has digital scarcity, but I actually think there are other things which have digital scarcity. So art can have digital scarcity. It's a very subjective matter. That's a whole other thing. But I actually think there are other things which have digital scarcity. And I think we're only just beginning to understand what that might be. I'll give you an example. This is something I was driving in the car and I was thinking about NFTs. And I was thinking, what would be like a really amazing NFT that's like a different paradigm of it? And I'll just say this as a concept, and it'll probably start everyone else on thinking. But imagine if you took a photo of the Gangnam Style YouTube channel when it had one view. Imagine that photo.
That's huge.
Like, who has a screenshot of that?
Right.
I'd buy that screenshot. I remember I saw it when it was 2 million views. And I was thinking about that and I was like, imagine you had the first screenshot, upload screenshot, moment in time, put that in an NFT and I can buy that moment.
I think every artist manager out there is going to be screenshotting his artist YouTube channels after this one.
Sure.
So
but conceptually,
market.
The first listen on, on a Spotify.
Yeah, one listen.
Yeah.
And so that was just my first thought. And I was like, that's probably obvious, that idea. It's probably, there's not much to it.
It just shows the possibilities are endless. So it's literally endless. Yeah.
And so, they're trading baseball cards and, that's traditionally how that goes. I was just thinking more of in a lateral way. That was where my mind went.
So in this space, you find it's actually expanding into this space. Do you want to talk a little bit about that today? What are the plans there?
Yeah. I think so. The first thing is, I actually literally just came from our office where it was very exciting. Tomorrow, we're actually going to do an alpha test of the first buy and sell of Bitcoin in the Finder app. So you can just literally, there'll be a wallet. You can put money in instantly. You can swipe. It'll instantly buy it for you or sell it for you.
Right.
Now that sounds like a pretty far-fetched idea for Finder to do, but I actually think I have a new view of where the world's going, and I think Finder as a business is changing, and it's looked like maybe a comparison site, but I don't think what that is just the beginning. I think the future of Finder is a fintech. It's the beginning right now. We should take a screenshot of it actually.
Yeah.
Put it on an NFT.
NFT at this moment.
Yeah.
Video format.
That's it.
100%. Imagine. Obviously we took the voice recording of when we first had that idea about taking that and that whole thing, and then you screenshotted that and you gave that
$5 billion company,
and that was what that's what was made. Sorry, that's a whole
claiming the rights to that.
Yeah, riffing on that.
Just see the ideas just running.
Talk.
Yeah. This is just the beginning, and I want to bring financial services and empower people to make money.
And what it sounds like to me is that what you're doing with the Finder in the crypto space is you're actually making it much more user-friendly. And I think that is like UX is in everything. So at the moment, just from a noob sort of perspective, like trying to invest in Bitcoin, it's actually hard. It's complicated for the average punter. So you guys improving that UX, I think that's, you guys are right with that.
100%. It's interesting. Someone asked me, okay, there's lots of companies already helping people buy and sell Bitcoin. Like, what's the difference? I said, the difference is we're going to make it the most convenient.
That's it.
Super simple.
Yeah. I love it. Just on that, just kind of like...
That's just the beginning, by the way.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole of where we are going with this.
We're just scratching the surface.
You're sitting at the top and you're like, and you move the leaves out of the way and then you realize there's like a sinkhole and like this purple glow that's coming up out of the ground. And you're like there's like Atlantis, like what is going? It's like is this go like what is actually down there?
That's the moment where you look at your mate next to you and you're like, I'm all in, and you go for the dig.
I actually wanted to touch on that a bit. So obviously you're an ideas man. You got a lot of ideas, and I think a lot of people out there, everyone seems to have an idea. You go to a barbecue, someone's got an idea. You go to your workplace, someone's got an idea to do something crazy. What are the top 3 pieces of advice that you can give anyone that has a crazy idea?
Put it out to the world and see what happens.
Validate it. Huge, man.
Top 3. I know that one sums up that's like a catch-all idea.
Your average.
But top 3, I want to give people like 3 tools, like 3 things that they can do when they've thought of this idea. Okay, what's next? Boom, boom, boom.
And you can see the relationship there. I'm just like happy with the statement, and Jamie's very systematic and structured.
And also, like we will give your course Go Live, your Go Live course the plug on this, because I'm sure that tackles pretty much all of this. But for the viewers, a bit of value
Yeah. So, I think in that course, it's literally, that's my process.
Yeah.
It's the 6 steps that I use.
Okay.
And, I go into all the ifs and what if that, and I think, Jamie, you'll love that. What happens when you get to here and, and I talk about my process in those moments about what happens when you present your idea to a customer and they hate it.
Mhm.
What do you do?
Okay.
For me, it's like, well, feedback is just feedback and you should be grateful for that. And that's an opportunity for potential and growth. And there's an opportunity that lives off the side of that. And in fact, you can decline that feedback. Most people, when I come up with an idea, if I don't get like a nah or like a ooh or a not there.
Playing it too safe.
Too safe.
Yeah.
Well and truly too much on the green, not shooting for an albatross, but just going for like par. That's great. And some ideas need to be like that. My ideas that I'm going for these days, so if you're talking about going all the way back to your first question, to be a disruptor, I think you need to swing for the fence.
Okay.
You're not going to put everything onto that. I'm trying to put more and more on. I have higher conviction. And sorry, I'm just going to take a side note potentially in answering your question because I know there's probably 3 things.
Yeah.
I'll come back to them. But I think this is an important side note. I think everyone, it's a new philosophy I have. I reject diversification. Diversification is for losers.
Is that within your investments as well?
Within my investments, within my thinking, within my ideas, I'm these days backing one big idea or 2.
Right.
Put all your eggs into one basket and watch that basket.
Did you start off with heaps of ideas or have you always been like that?
I've had the opposite style of thinking. This is a new style of thinking that I've started to embody and because what Find is really good at is it's spread itself really wide and it's handled COVID really well and lots of other comparison services haven't done so well because we were so diversified and that makes it safe. It's a great safe company. Just carries on. There's something to compare. There's an endless shelf of infinite comparisons that need to be done. Never ending. That's great. But I think the way I think about these days is instead, I think if you take one thing and do it remarkably, uniquely, where someone is compelled to use your service or product, that to me is the new benchmark. That's what I aspire to. Just side note, not sure where that goes exactly in your question, but just
definitely that could be part of it. Like that could be part of those 3 steps. Like really finding out that one thing that you're going to do better than anyone else out there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, that's my approach these days. I think the first part is just figure out how you can, get clear on the problem and the customer. And the way I tend to do that is I take my idea and I shop it to everyone. Just constant.
So you're all in. Like when it comes to an idea, you validate it and then it's all in.
All in. It used to be not so all in. Now I'm like, I'm trying to ride something all the way. Because I think I'm in a different place as well. Like in the beginning, I think, so, validate it, take a small bet and then, roll it out and test it and prove it, right? That tends to be a good way to start and get off the ground. But these days, I feel I've got enough experience. I have capital, human capital, inspirational capital. I have energy capital inside myself. I have clarity. I have experience capital. And I can combine all of that capital together to make bigger and better, conviction bets. Some of them are going to be wrong, and I've made wrong ones as well. And then as they go down, so I give you an example. So during COVID, we launched a marketplace on Finder.
Okay.
Full launched. Like people were buying and selling stuff. Incredible. I was like, wow, this is amazing. We shut it down 2 months ago.
And you could buy and sell anything?
Yeah.
Like a Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace kind of scenario?
Yeah.
Why'd you shut it down?
So we looked at it and, we just didn't have enough investment going into it. You're competing against eBay, competing against Amazon. The level of capital and investment required to go after that market, we're not fit to go for that.
But surely at the start, you would have, like when you're putting that together, you would have thought big, right? You would have thought like, let's take this on, let's do this.
Or going by the idea and the concept that you just explained to us in regards to putting all your eggs in one basket, perhaps could there have been a better idea to just focus on a single product or a single vertical?
Potentially didn't think that far ahead. It was, COVID and crazy stuff was going on. It was the bet that I thought would, because I didn't know how long it was going to last for. I had no, it was a hedge for the company to some extent, because I thought maybe what happens if people are in their homes for 5 years, or it gets crazier and crazier, and then digital marketplaces become the thing that everyone needs. I didn't know where to assess the world. And then as the world became clearer, then I realized that's probably investment. And the way I think of that is 70% of your bet, your investments are going to come off, 30% aren't, and I just kill them.
Yeah, just keep moving on.
And the 70% can, you redirect the resources in, great, and sort of we move on. So, I suppose it was a strong conviction bet. It wasn't all in. It was probably, there's a phase probably to it. There's an investment, then there's a continued investment, and then there's like let's go. The Finder app's probably that. It started off with just one person, and we were just kicking around ideas. We had literally a blank piece of paper. It wasn't the Finder app in the beginning. It was just, hey, I want to build this app. I'm just going to build an app. What kind of app? I don't know. It's going to be awesome, but we'll figure out something. And we just sat and we just kicked around ideas and wrote them up on the wall, and we explored a few, and we're going down these rabbit holes. And actually, the first idea we built, we actually threw out, which was to automatically switch savings accounts. The next idea we built, the interface just wasn't right. And 2 months before we were going to launch, we actually rebuilt the entire thing because it just wasn't right. And the actual app you see today is actually the third iteration. And obviously there'll be a fourth, fifth, and sixth, But I think, that team has now grown, and it's probably 25 people. In the beginning, it was literally just some ideas and some space and some time and a lot of conviction on making something great. I don't know if that answered your question. It's probably a long bow of an answer.
And also, again, your course would go right into detail with that. So anyone that does have an idea out there, the Go Live course, check it out. Fred's course.
Way to go.
Yeah, it's probably not not for everyone. If you're keen to launch it and it's really about getting confident about launching something.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, that's the moment where you kind of tell yourself, I can't do this. And, and you watch this and it fires you up, and it gives you the little formula, and you just follow it.
Yeah.
And, when I actually modeled this off, I've helped so many people start their business, like just start. I'm really good at that. And I just thought, hey, could I share that? And maybe lots of people don't need that, and so it's not for everyone. But if you're trying to start something, that's probably it's my process.
Good framework. Good framework.
Now, I want to take this kind of left field a little bit, because you were talking about capital, financial capital, human capital, and you mentioned energy capital. Now, you're a father of three with a newborn. How do you, as Fred, prime yourself for performance on a daily basis? Do you have a specific practice? Like, I know for myself, I meditate on a daily basis. And if I don't meditate, I could literally walk in and be like, today we're changing the name of the company. I'm at kind of that extreme. Do you have a practice? Is there anything that you do in regards to really delving into that energy, equity?
That's a great question. So it's something which I've really focused on the last, I'd say, last year in particular. Last year was the year of energy. I actually there's actually an energy zone now in the office, and everyone knows it. And I actually reconfigured one entire floor of our office. It's into an energy cube. It's actually a cube of desks that all surround each other, and we all look towards each other and we feel together, and it's just energy.
That's so sick, man.
It's
I love it.
Anyway, that's probably one of those ideas.
I thought
came
that
in.
was going completely left field too. I thought you were going to say, actually name my baby Energy.
Could have. No, I gave him a different name. I gave him the name Frederick, which is a pretty good name. But there's a reason for that. So he's the sixth Frederick in my family. So that's, I suppose, speaks to me about some of my values about legacy and my respect for family. And, I am a family man in my private life, and I keep that, what I do there. It's a thing which
And props to you for that, man.
I take it very seriously. I got divorced in 2015, but I have a great relationship with my ex-wife. She's an amazing woman. I love her. She's amazing. We go traveling together. We've been to Korea. Like when we got divorced, 2 days later, we went traveling together. That's pretty, I don't know. That's probably, anyway. Two great girls with her, their mum, and obviously he's actually, one of his middle names is Wolf. We call him the Wolf. He says, that was, my daughters gave him that name. So we call him the Wolf, and he wolfs down milk. Wow. So, I think I'll just tell a story. I think it's probably a good story and a good analogy is, so the other day, last Friday, my partner, B, she booked a hotel room for me, and it was just to go and sleep. I literally went, it was in Bondi as well. I obviously live nearby there. And I just went to sleep. It's, to create that space and to rebuild my energy. And I realized I was getting so low. I was falling asleep in my car. I was, it was pretty bad. But I was like carrying on. Like it wasn't, it was like a toaster that wasn't plugged in. I was still trying to cook the toast. I'm like, So I plugged the toaster back in, and, on the weekend I went for 2 runs. I like to run the soft sand. I'm not like a athlete marathon runner. I'm not trying to run for anything. I'm just running for life. I run 10 laps on the soft sand, I've run 12. I'm not running for someone else. I'm not joining a competition. I'm just running for me. And so I think over time, so what's instructive about that story, I think, is one, what an incredible partner to recognize, I was really low on energy and I wasn't performing at my best, and my contribution to, I think of a family. So maybe just side note, shout out to all the mums who run the company of the family. They are the first CEOs. That's the fact. And we were all, there's the rubbish department and there's the laundry department, and, and I'm a terrible employee from most senses, but I'm really good. I'm one of the really good, I bring in a lot of profit into the family. So that's a good thing, So they keep me around,
That's it.
And
Head of sales.
Yeah, head of sales. And I'm innovation and product development and resources. I'm really good at the resource department. But shout out to the mums who are running these families and the systems and processes that's the first business that I always respect. And I see it as a company, and I think, and I respect that. I think it's incredible what mums do, running that business. And it's hard, you're managing so many multitasking things. Like mums are just the most incredible people, like especially when you have children as well, and it's stacked up. It's like, I was a single dad for quite a while, so I understand what that's like being the CEO of the house. So I just want to contextualize that, right? So lots of energy going into the family business, and I ran out of energy, and my partner went, hey, you need, she went, from an HR department, hey, your motivation and energy is pretty low. You need to go and have some time out. And that's incredible, right? So but what's actually happening here? Let's go back. Your contribution to the business you're running, or to your life, to your family, to your hobby, to your art, to your purpose, to your passion, is a factor, is one of the key factors to that, is your level of energy. And normally when you're starting a company, particularly, you are the most valuable asset because there's no one else. And if you're not running in top energy, then the company's not actually getting the most out of it, what it needs. And your contribution is not quite where it needs to be. And everyone else, as you know, grow a company, they want, you to respond, not to react. They want you to lead, not to micromanage. They want you to, empathize and not necessarily sympathize. They want to have those private chats when you're not staring at your phone for that, 3 minutes where you can have that direct chat and give that really key piece of feedback that they know that you care about them and they care about you and that you're connected to this company and you believe in where it's going. That, whether you're doing that and being in those moments, that determines the success of that company. And so your energy state and your mental state is essential at that. If you're not there, the company's not there. And I think that's the level of responsibility I sort of take that to.
And how do you look after your mental state?
So, I no longer, I used to, socialize. I no longer drink or anything like that. I don't party anymore. I still go to parties. I'm just not a partier, if that makes sense, anymore. It's been 2.5 years now. And, I think it's interesting because you have different types of fun. So for me, when I don't go to bars anymore because bars are really an institutionalized place to like consume alcohol, really. If you think about it, it's like really good, slow distribution of the product at a very high margin and you're very comfortable because everyone else is doing it together when you really know what's going on, right? So it's not a great place, I don't think. Energy-wise, I don't think it gives me that much energy. I think it more takes energy. And then you've got to pay it down the next day because you borrowed it.
Would you consider yourself as an introvert? And that's the reason why you actually deem bars as a place and an environment that actually takes energy from you?
No, I think potentially the opposite. I'm probably extroverted because I go, I love to go to the next level and meet everyone. And I don't know. I think then I spend a lot of energy doing that.
Yep.
So, but same thing. If you're introverted, you'd need to like defend and, so I can understand. Similar question. So what do I try to do? I create space. So in my diary, I had just blanks. Just like every week there are 2 spots of just brainstorming and planning. And there's no agenda.
Yeah. It's weird.
It's like, if you want to join my brainstorming and planning time, this is my brainstorming and planning time. Anyone who wants to join, I'll just sit on the couch and people will come and they'll bring their idea or they won't, or we'll plan something, or you can have that sporadic moment in time meeting. So creating this space. Then I create the space for exercise as best I possibly can. As I think everyone has their exercise, which gets them, you get your heart rate up, you get yourself into that zone where you stop thinking about what you're thinking about, your mind switches off and your body, you're actually giving service to your organic matter of that is yourself. I think whatever that is, it could be bike riding, it could be walking, it could be kayaking, it could be literally, going on a treadmill. Any of those things I think are fantastic. But I think you need to find one of those because unfortunately we're not cyborgs yet and you need to repair the organic matter. In terms of, so where do I have fun? I like to eat. The gastronomy for me I love it. I seek very specific types of restaurants, types of foods, particular ones that I enjoy, new experiences, the entire environment. And so I constantly seek that. And that's not necessarily expensive. It could be really, like the price is not what it's all about. To me, it's the experience. I hunt and I enjoy those kind of things. I really love French food. I love Northern Chinese food. I seek certain types of gastronomy. I enjoy that. And it's my dopamine, I'll eat a burger and chips because I love burgers, and I feel amazing. I get a big dopamine hit at the back of that. It's probably not the most healthy thing, but it gives me energy.
But it's probably healthier than drinking and partying. So getting your dopamine from a chocolate bar is way more better for you. Less output of energy. You're still getting that dopamine hit.
Yeah. And that could be, exactly right. It's you've got that receptor inside your body And everything can be taken to excess. It could be eat excessive amounts of chocolate and that would just be just as destructive.
Stupid, yeah.
I think it's just, you find a hit and, for me, it's like salty, then sweet, and I always try and hunt those in some way, shape or form. I think the other part, I do have an emotional coach. So I actually saw him today and he challenged me a lot. And I asked him to challenge me. I said, I want you to challenge me. I feel like I'm ready to grow again. I'm just not sure where. That was the question. It was an interesting question, even for myself. I think that, and I started really working on myself. So let's get clear on that. I think this is important from an energy perspective. There's a physical part. There's a mental part. I read a lot of books. I'm a slow reader. I'm not a great reader. Actually, I think I struggle to read. I have to read things many times. And I have to slowly, like I even the other day I had to write a date really quickly and it was, February and I just couldn't get February out. I'm not sure the U and the R, I don't know which way it goes. It just is something which my mind doesn't work terribly well at. I don't have that superpower of exactness. So I work around that. But reading I think is a great, huge amount of bandwidth that can be delivered in a small amount of time by reading. It's one of the leverages I think of human life. The third one is emotional. So I call it going to the emotional gym. I think most people working on yourself emotionally and understanding who you are and working on yourself and growing, that is work to me. And it's just as important as going to the gym or, mentally improving. And I have unbelievable commitment to myself and growing myself emotionally. And in those three things, I kind of work on those. And then I think the last part is I just, every now and then I just throw in an X factor. Like I just think of an idea and I just go and do it and go on an adventure and then I don't know what's going to happen. And that's all part of it. I just love a surprise. My partner calls me the extraordinary unexpected.
I love that.
It's huge, man.
So, Fred, this is a section of our podcast that we call Rocket Questions. So there's 10 questions. Both Jamie and I will be asking 5 questions each.
Love your podcast, by the way. And shout out to all everyone who's listening right now. This is where it's at. These guys have got the questions. They've got the stories. They've done the research. They've got an incredible team back here as well. You should check this team out. This place is
Appreciate that,
sick.
man.
Thank you so much.
Rocket. Really, I didn't know what to expect, but the quality in this, you guys, you are getting the top grade out here.
Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate that. Okay, so let's kick it off with the first question. Jamie, do you want to do the honors?
Yep. So the first question is, if you could turn back time and change one thing in your journey, what would it be?
Start earlier, back myself earlier. And I think but I had to go and get those lessons to get to where I was. So
exactly.
I probably got nothing.
Yeah.
Huge. What's the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning?
Check my phone.
That's 2 in a row now. 2 in a row we've had,
What do I
we've had
look
that
for?
answer.
So I'm looking for, that's even worse. I check the stock market. I'm so into it. I love companies. I love markets. I'm so into investing right now. So I actually go on my Robinhood.
Yeah, nice. Who are your 3 dream?
There's a bit of a pause
That's
there.
cool. Who are your 3 dream dinner guests, dead or alive, and why?
I think it would be great to meet Benjamin Franklin. He's an innovator, a pioneer, an ideator, a statesman, patriot. That's why they put him on the $100 bill. I think Abraham Lincoln would have been a great man to meet, just to sit with him. He said, this is the thing I was listening to the other day, and you can share this one as well. Great things come to those who wait after the hustlers have left it behind.
That's huge.
That was Abraham Lincoln.
Which is a go-getter mentality, right?
Yeah, he was just, always on. I think, and that's why they made a statue of him and put him in Washington, D.C., and they put him on the dollar bill. I think this is a weird one, but I think Nikola Tesla would have been a really interesting guy to meet. He so let's give context. Tesla really invented electricity. Let's be straight about it. He built the Hoover Dam with Westinghouse, Mr. Westinghouse, and he made it work. He made, the AC/DC work. Everyone was going DC. Edison actually went DC, and there was all these explosions and fires and people died. And Westinghouse was actually the guy who brought electricity. So pioneering to think like that, I think is great. Hanging out, I don't know how they'd all hang out. You need to work on the vibe as well. Like, because if Benny wasn't happy with that, it'd be like not cool, And like,
on a dinner.
Yeah, it wouldn't go down so well. And Tesla's there, and he's just not out.
What are these guys doing?
Yeah, he's like, seriously, like, what are we doing here? You got to work on that.
Back from the dead.
Yeah, it's like, I reckon all of them are scratching on the lid trying to come out.
It's our time again.
Yeah.
All right, question number 4. What's the last new thing that you've tried? And this could be anything. It could be archery.
I just got into DeFi in a big way in cryptocurrency. So I'm earning that yield. I'm farming.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that
Specific picks within that space.
I think that the Binance Smart Chain is a revolution.
Yep.
I think the Huobi chain, I think it's a big call, is a revolution. I think private blockchains are probably incredible. I actually have so much admiration now for Binance in and of itself and its actually contribution to cryptocurrency. I think I actually understand the Aave project now.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it before. I didn't get a lot of things before. I didn't understand liquidity provision, automatic market makers, all of that. I had no idea. I just recently got into it. The last, I'd say 5 days have been an incredible rabbit hole, and I'm just on fire again. I'm enjoying it.
That's awesome. I know this one's actually going to be a bit tricky because you've got a lot of recommendations here and I've been following them. But if you could only recommend one book, what would it be? I knew this one would be tricky, by the way.
Wow, it's a really hard question because it's so much context. I think a great book has a very simple message that's common sense, but it's not. I think a book that profoundly affected me was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah. I bought that book off the back of your recommendation, actually. Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind. Like, I know that's obvious. And everyone, you intuit that. But it just lays out 7 things. And if you just think about those, you just are more effective in your life.
Yeah. Awesome.
What is the best advice that you've ever received?
Focus, Fred.
This one's a bit left field, but when you reach the pearly gates of heaven, what do you want God, him or her to say to you when he greets you?
You go, Mr. Schebesta. We didn't expect that to happen. And then I think we'll have a chat about some of those ideas and the adventures and contribution that I've made to the world. And in some small way, I don't expect to be treated any different, but I hope my contribution creates some sort of legacy that lasts forever.
Last question, Sid.
What pushes you daily to be the best version of yourself? And also, that's not the last question. There's 2 more.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not done yet. I don't think the game is actually not a finite game. It's an infinite game. And I don't feel I have delivered and created the best manifestation that I can possibly make, I'm on my way there. And that's the reason why I get out of bed. That's why I do that. And someone asked me that, like, this is probably controversial, but you could probably print this somewhere. I don't know.
Another NFT.
Yeah, you could NFT this one. I don't think I necessarily, wake up in the morning and think, hey, how can I help people make as much money as possible? I think that's just one of the things which, for me, is what Finder does. And I think it's great. Saving money, investing money, helps people make money. Great. But that's not really why I get out of bed.
Mm.
And that's probably challenging for me. And it's a daily challenge. But I just want to create something great that no one's ever done before.
That's huge. And yeah, this is actually the last question. So what does the word defiant mean to you?
Courageous. Prepared to go where others have not been before. There was a poster on the wall next to my dad's computer, which I may have played quite a bit as a child, and enjoyed it a lot. Played probably a bit too much, but I learned a lot from playing the games. And it said on it, there was a ski slope and there was a skier skiing down this mountain. It said, and he was skiing a track, and then there was no other tracks in front of him. And it said, beaten paths are for beaten men. It's probably a little, I'm not sure if you can say that these days, but it's probably not very compliant. But it struck me in, the Wright brothers didn't have a pilot license.
Mm.
I think that's what defiant means to me.
Yeah, that's an incredible answer. We've been getting a lot of really good answers on that one. So yeah, it's good to hear from you, someone that has defied the odds, paths your own lane, as you say. But yeah, that's it for today's show. Really appreciate you coming down, man.
We got you out of the office today.
Got you out of the office.
We didn't dial in, which was great. Also, one thing that I want to mention is I kind of had in my head an expectation of how this was going to play out, and your energy was so calming throughout the whole podcast. One thing that I actually noticed that, I don't want to compare, but that no one's actually ever done throughout the podcast was that you poured water into our glasses first throughout the podcast before you poured yourself a glass of water. And I think that's leadership right there, man. This podcast has been super inspirational. You're a giant within the space. I think both Jamie and I inspired to, one day kind of be like you. And we really appreciate your time in coming down and sitting throughout this episode.
It's an honor. I'm very grateful you would make the space for me. It's a great podcast. Everyone subscribe right now immediately. This is where it's at.
Hit it.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.